CNN, I like to call it the crumbling news network. There is a lot of allegations coming out. Obviously, Chris Cuomo, we covered that on the show. He is gone. And then, obviously, we don't want to take stuff like this lightly. Obviously, we're having a lot of fun on the show, but there seems to be a pattern going on at CNN, the crumbling news network. So, senior CNN producer was arrested by the FBI after coercing a woman to let him engage in sexual activities with her 9-year-old daughter. So that was senior CNN producer John Griffin. So he's charged with 3 counts of using a facility of interstate commerce to abuse underage girls. There's more information that came out to say that he allegedly paid a mother $3,000 to fly her and her 9-year-old daughter from Nevada to Logan Airport in Boston. Also, Griffin and the daughter engaged in illegal sexual activity at the house, according to the DOJ. And unfortunately, this keeps going too. He allegedly instructed a woman and her 14-year-old daughter to remove their clothes during a video chat in April of 2020. He also used messaging apps such as Google Hangout and Kik in order to contact the parents of underage girls.
Okay. That's gross.
It's horrible. And things like that, too, we see what happened to Chris Cuomo. And he actually worked with Chris Cuomo a little bit. And we have a photo of that we're going to show right now. But he's been with CNN since 2003, working as a senior producer there. And according to his LinkedIn profile, he did some work with Chris Cuomo. But after you hear about the cover-up with former Governor Andrew Cuomo, and then his brother, we've talked about it in the show, where there is a little bit, Tucker said, this like sympathy action where it's like you're trying to protect your family, but it gets to a point where people tune into Chris Cuomo's, or tuned in, not a lot, tuned into Chris Cuomo's show for him as a journalist. And at that point, you're not interviewing your brother, you're interviewing the governor of New York at the time, and you are a journalist, and you're there to do your job, and you're there to have journalistic integrity. He didn't have it. He tried to cover up a lot. And then you hear now this senior producer, and it seems like there's a trend going on.
And Jeffrey Toobin.
Yes.
Do you remember that? That was
Right,
disgusting. I mean, when that happened, like I go on Newsmax. I know you do too, Isabel. Sometimes we're on together. And we had to talk about it. And like the fact that, I mean, I'm 24. It feels creepy to have to talk about how this guy was brought back onto the team after doing that on a Zoom call. CNN brought him back on and had a female host bring him on and interview him and literally say, so you did XYZ on camera when you were, inappropriately behaving during a Zoom call, and tell us about that, tell us what you've learned, all this stuff. Can you believe that this is now, like, how many times has CNN messed up with creepy stuff like this? It's unacceptable.
It's not surprising, though, and that's what's really hard to wrap our heads around, I think, in 2021 America, but especially with underage children being involved in this stuff and being viewed as objects. It's very, very sad, but this is a trend that's picking up all across the United States. You're starting to see people advocate for pedophilia to be included in the LGBT acronym and the giant acronym that always grows every single day. I can't keep up with it. You're seeing children be brought to pride marches. A few years ago, I went with PragerU to the Pride March in San Francisco. Wild day, probably the craziest day of my life. And parents were encouraging their children to take pictures with fully nude grown men. I mean, this is just something that has become a virtue in our society. And had you asked me as a teenager or as a kid if anything like this would have been normal, I would have said, are you crazy? Like, you deserve to be locked up in a mental institution. And now this is just becoming the norm for people. And my biggest question is, who are these parents? That are encouraging this type of behavior, that are communicating back to these people and bringing their children to participate in this behavior. The fact that that is considered not normal necessarily, but it's becoming more common in the parenting world is just so disgusting to me. Like, where have our values as a society gone?
This is Charlie Kirk, founder and CEO of Turning Point USA. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Turning Point USA.